Jelly Roll's divorce became public on Monday, the 15th of June, when a moving truck pulled up outside a house in Tennessee. Not a mansion you'd see in a magazine, a working ranch, the kind of place a man buys when he's spent enough of his life not having one. And by the time the photographs of that truck made their way online, the story was already moving faster than anyone could keep up with, because the house belonged to Jason DeFord, the man the world knows as Jelly Roll, and the woman he'd been married to for nearly 10 years. For most of a decade, they were sold to us as the great country music love story, the redemption arc, the tattooed kid from Antioch who got out of jail, got clean, got famous, and got the girl who, by his own telling, saved his life. They said it on red carpets, they said it on podcasts. He said it in front of the entire music industry holding a Grammy, and then sometime this spring it ended, quietly, on paper, weeks before any of us knew. The question everyone's asking tonight is why? And the honest answer, the one nobody selling you a headline wants to give you, is that we don't fully know yet. But we can go back through the last year, back through the posts, the speeches, the memoir, the small moments that didn't mean anything at the time. Because if you line them all up, some of them start to look a little different now. This is the story of how Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO got here. Let's start with the hard facts, because there are a lot of rumors flying tonight, and you deserve the verified version first. The split became public on Monday, June 15th, when TMZ reported that the two of them were divorcing. Within hours, it was confirmed across the major outlets: NBC News, Billboard, Rolling Stone, People. But here's the detail that stopped people cold. The divorce wasn't filed that day, according to court records reported by Fox News Digital. Jelly Roll filed back on May the 18th in Williamson County, Tennessee. The paperwork lists their date of separation as May the 9th and cites the reason almost every quiet divorce cites: irreconcilable differences. Sit with that timeline for a second. The world found out on June 15th, but by then, on paper, this marriage had been over for nearly a month. They'd separated. He'd filed. The lawyers were already working. And the two of them kept living their public lives, the shows, the posts, the appearances, while the rest of us had no idea. That's not unusual for famous couples, but it's why tonight feels less like a bombshell and more like a curtain being pulled back on something that already happened. For the record, here's who we're talking about. Jelly Roll Jason DeFord is 41 years old, one of the biggest crossover artists in the country right now, a man whose whole brand is built on brutal honesty about his past. The guy who broke through with Son of a Sinner, followed it up with Need a Favor, and then turned Beautifully Broken into a Grammy-winning album on Republic Records and BBR Music Group. Bunnie XO, born Elisa DeFord, is 46, a media personality in her own right, host of the Dumb Blonde podcast with an audience in the millions. They met in Las Vegas back in 2015, married there in August of 2016, and eventually built their life together in Tennessee. This year would have been 10 years, and as of tonight, neither of them has publicly explained what went wrong. No statement of blame, no tell-all interview, just a filing, a separation date, and 3 words: irreconcilable differences. So everything else you hear tonight, every theory, every source, every fan reading tea leaves, sits on top of those facts. Keep that line in your head as we go. We know the marriage ended, we do not know why. Anyone who tells you otherwise is guessing. Now let's look at the year that led here, because the facts are simple, but the story underneath them is not. To understand how big this is, you have to understand how hard they sold the opposite. Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO weren't just married, they were the marriage. In a genre full of breakups and bottle service, they were the couple who'd been to the bottom and climbed out together. He told the story constantly: the arrests, the addiction, the years he lost, and in every version of that story, she was the turning point, the reason he stopped, the reason he's still here. He didn't keep that private. He built it into the act. You could hear it in Son of a Sinner, you could hear it in Need a Favor, and you could hear it every time he opened his mouth on the Little Ass Shed tour. The high watermark came on February the 1st at the Grammys. Jelly Roll won Best Contemporary Country Album for Beautifully Broken, a genuine career milestone, the industry finally handing him the trophy. And when he got up there at Crypto.com Arena, he didn't thank a label or a producer first. He talked about her. He credited Bunnie on that stage in front of everyone with saving his life, said that without her and without his faith, he'd have ended up dead or in jail. That was 4 months ago. 4 months before the moving truck. I want to be careful here because this is exactly the kind of moment people rewrite after the fact. In February, that speech was just a man in love giving credit to his wife. It's only tonight, with what we now know, that it reads like the last chapter of something. We're the ones adding that meaning. He wasn't. But you can understand why fans are sitting with it tonight, because if you'd asked anyone in that room in February whether this marriage was in trouble, they'd have laughed at you. The man had just thanked her for his life on the biggest night of his career, and less than 90 days later, he filed. Here's where the story gets more complicated and where I have to be the most careful with you. This February, the same month as the Grammys, Bunnie XO released a memoir, stripped down, unfiltered, and unapologetic. It was promoted as exactly what the title promises. Her life, no filter, the hard parts included. And one of the hard parts she wrote about was something Jelly Roll had already made public himself. That years ago, back around 2018, he had an affair. He's spoken about it openly. Last fall on the Human School podcast, he called it one of the worst moments of his adult life. This isn't a rumor I'm breaking tonight. It's something both of them chose to put on the record in his interviews and in her book as part of the We Survived It story. Now stay with me here because this is where a lot of channels tonight are going to lie to you. That affair was 2018. By every public account, they worked through it. They stayed married for years afterward. They kept telling the redemption story. There's no evidence, none, that the 2018 affair has anything to do with the divorce filed in 2026. Nobody close to either of them has said so. The filing doesn't say so. To connect those two things tonight would be me putting words in their mouths, and I'm not going to do that to you. So why bring the memoir up at all? Because of the timing, and only the timing. February, the memoir comes out, reopening the hardest chapter of their marriage in public. February, the Grammy speech. May, the separation. It's possible those things are connected. It's just as possible they're a coincidence, a book written and scheduled long before, landing in a year that happened to end in a divorce. I can't tell you which it is, and neither can anyone else right now. But when you put a tell-all memoir and a divorce filing 3 months apart, people are going to draw a line between them, whether or not the line is real. File that away. We'll come back to it. Now we get to the quiet part. The weeks that, in hindsight, are the actual story. Remember the date on the paperwork. Separation, May the 9th. Filing, May the 18th. So look at what was happening around those dates in public, while the two of them already knew what we didn't. This is the stretch where fans going back through the timeline this week started noticing things, and I want to be honest about what these are. They're small, ordinary moments that only look meaningful because we now know what was happening behind them. This is hindsight talking. But it's worth walking through because it's what the internet is fixated on tonight. People started pointing at photos where Jelly Roll's wedding ring was no longer on his hand. They started counting the days since the two of them had posted together. They started rereading captions that seemed in May like nothing at all. Here's my honest take on all of it. A missing ring in one photo proves nothing. People take rings off for 100 reasons. A gap in joint posts proves nothing. On any normal week, none of us would have given a single one of these a second look. But that's the strange thing about a divorce that goes public a month late. It hands the audience a finished puzzle and lets them go back and find the pieces. And when you already know how it ends, everything in those final weeks starts to look like a clue, even the things that aren't. So I'm not going to stand here and tell you the ring was a confession. I'm telling you it's what people saw once they knew where to look. There's a difference, and most of the videos you'll watch tonight won't draw it for you. Which brings us to the post everyone's talking about. In the hours around the news breaking, Bunnie XO posted on social media a photo and a caption about getting her sparkle back. Around the same time, she shared herself lip-syncing along to an old Nickelback breakup song. The internet did what the internet does. Within minutes, it was decided. This was a message. A woman stepping into a new chapter, telling the world she was fine. Maybe better than fine, and maybe it was. I'm not going to insult you by pretending a 46-year-old woman posting a breakup anthem the same week her divorce goes public is a total coincidence. She's a media professional, the host of the Dumb Blonde podcast, a woman with millions of followers who knows exactly how a caption lands. There's a real chance this was her saying something on her own terms. But here's where I'll hold the line again. We don't know what she meant. Getting her sparkle back is not a statement about the marriage. It's not an accusation. It's not a confession. It's a caption. And the moment we decide it's anything more than that, we've stopped reporting and started writing fan fiction about a real woman going through a real hard thing. What I'll say is this. Of everything in this story, that post is the closest thing we have to either of them speaking. Not lawyers, not sources, her. And what she chose to say wasn't anger and it wasn't grief. It was sparkle. Read that however you want, but read it knowing it's the one piece of this where she actually picked the words. So where does that leave us tonight? Legally, it leaves us at the beginning, not the end. A filing is a starting gun, not a finish line. Williamson County, irreconcilable differences. Separated since May the 9th, 10 years of a marriage now have to be divided, and two people who built a very public life together now have to figure out how to have separate ones. There's also a daughter, Bolly Ann, in this picture, and anyone who's been through a public split knows that the hardest conversations are never the ones that end up in court documents. Emotionally, it leaves a lot of people genuinely shaken, and I don't think that should be mocked. This wasn't a couple anyone was rooting against. For a lot of folks watching this channel, Jelly Roll and Bunnie XO were proof that the redemption story can be real. That you can come from the bottom, find the right person, and make it last. Tonight, that story got more complicated. That's allowed to sting. And here's the thing I keep coming back to. We started tonight with a moving truck and 3 words on a court document. We walked back through a year, a Grammy speech at Crypto.com Arena on February the 1st, a memoir, a quiet spring, a caption about sparkle. And at the end of all of it, we land in the same honest place we started. We know it's over. We don't know why. Everything in between, the ring, the song, the timing of the book, those are the things we noticed once we knew how the story ended. They might mean everything, they might mean nothing. And the people who could actually tell you the truth are, so far, choosing not to, which honestly is their right. So be careful tonight with the channels and the comment sections that have already decided, the ones that have named a villain, the ones that have a reason, a cause, a confession, because none of that has come from Jelly Roll, and none of it has come from Bunnie. It's come from people who, like us, are looking at the same handful of clues from the outside and filling in the blanks with whatever makes the best story. The difference is whether you tell them it's a guess. I'll keep this channel updated as the actual facts come in. If either of them speaks, if the filing moves, if there's something real to report, you'll hear it here and you'll hear it straight with the rumors labeled as rumors. Until then, I want to know what you think. Not about who's to blame, but about the bigger question. When a couple sells you the love story this hard, this publicly, for this long, do we have any right to feel let down when it ends? Or did we just forget that the people behind the story are allowed to be human and allowed to change? Tell me in the comments, I read them. If you made it this far, you already know the deal. The people who actually watch the whole thing are the reason this channel exists, and most of the folks the algorithm sends here don't subscribe. If you got something out of this, the subscribe button costs you nothing, and it tells me to keep making these the honest way. I'm going to keep doing exactly that. I'll see you on the next one.